When players first pick up Tomb Raider in 1996, the early hours of the game serve as a steady introduction. You begin in caves, tombs and smaller underground spaces, levels that feel more like training grounds than true tests. They are atmospheric and amazing, yes, do not get me wrong, and they establish the fundamentals: running, climbing and swimming, and the importance of careful exploration. But up to this point, the environments are almost grounded, horizontal and somewhat contained. And then, welcomes St. Francis's Folly. This is the level where the game makes a statement, where the scale suddenly changes, and the ambition behind Tomb Raider becomes impossible to ignore. For the first time, you're dropped into a space that isn't just a corridor or a single puzzle chamber. It's a towering vertical hub that stretches upwards and downwards, packed with interconnected rooms and challenges. Players often describe St. Francis Folly as the first real, difficult level. It's the moment where the game stops kind of holding your hand. Up until now, the dangers felt manageable. Here though, you are confronted with death-defying jumps, intricate platforming, and the looming presence of rival adventurer, Pierre. The stakes feel higher. The level is less about simply moving forward, and more about proving mastery over everything you've learned so far. What's remarkable is how sudden the leap in complexity feels, yet how natural it is in hindsight. It's a carefully designed escalation, a test that makes sense both narratively and mechanically. Lara has entered a new frontier, and so have you as the player. St. Francis's Folly raises the difficulty, and it sets the tone of the game from here on out. You know you're in for something grander, something far more challenging, and ultimately, something unforgettable. Come with me as I dive into the wonderful level of Tomb Raider 1's St. Francis's Folly. One of the reasons I think St. Francis's Folly makes such an impression is due to its aesthetic. It is the first level of Greece. After several levels spent in tombs, caves and ruins that are atmospheric but somewhat grounded, this space feels completely different, with maybe the exception of Lost Valley. Suddenly, you're in what looks like a colossal Greco-Roman structure, an abandoned monument carved into stone, towering upwards into darkness and light. The hub chamber itself is unforgettable. You step onto a somewhat balcony and immediately just see how high the room stretches. The music in the background is beautiful too, really bringing in that sense of atmosphere and wonder. Multiple levels of ledges, pillars and balconies are stacked one above the other. It's vertical in a way few games at the time even attempted. Instead of feeling like you're moving through a maze, you're standing inside a grand architectural marvel, with the freedom to explore it from top to bottom. What makes it powerful is the sense of scale. Early levels were often narrow and claustrophobic, corridors that pressed in and around you, tunnels that limited your view. Here, the environment breathes. The openness is intimidating, and every step you take along a ledge or balcony, you're aware just of how far you could fall. The art direction reinforces this grandeur. Stone textures feel aged and heavy, but never too plain. Pillars, doorways and carvings all suggest this was once a place of reverence, and maybe even worship, to St. Francis, long before Lara arrived. The interplay of light and shadows sells it even further. The PlayStation hardware had its limits, but core design used it to their advantage. Light sources are placed to emphasise the verticality, casting shadows across the walls, catching the edges of stone, making the hub chamber feel alive in a way that pixels alone shouldn't allow. And then there's the thematic detail, the 4 puzzle rooms: Thor, Atlas, Neptune and Damocles. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that last one incorrectly. These aren't just functional, they actually carry mythological weight. Each one connects to ancient gods and stories, which strengthens the illusion that this place was designed as a trial and a proving ground. Even before you step into them, the doors themselves stand like invitations, promising something unique inside. And if you think about it, back in 1996, No other 3D action-adventure game offered environments with this kind of grandeur and coherence. For players who had grown up on platformers or dungeon crawlers, St. Francis Folly felt transformative. It was about truly exploring a place that felt monumental, a space with history and purpose. The aesthetic shift is what cements this level as iconic in my opinion. It isn't simply a gameplay arena, it's a place that feels alive, a forgotten monument waiting to be conquered. And those 4 doors leading off from the hub, they're more than just decoration. They hide some of the most memorable puzzle rooms in the entire game. What really defines St. Francis Folly isn't just the unique architectural design of the level, it's what lies behind the 4 doors branching off from it. Each one leads to a puzzle chamber inspired by a different figure from classic Greek mythology: Thor, Atlas, Neptune and Damocles. Together, these rooms transform the level into something that feels like a trial, designed to test Lara's skill and composure. The Thor room is perhaps the most dramatic. As you enter, lightning strikes. It seems almost impossible to get through this room. However, with a few careful steps, you can make it through to the other side. You will then approach a big chamber. A stone hammer looms above, suspended and waiting. Beneath it is a pressure pad, which, the longer you stand on, will actually descend the hammer closer and closer to the ground. This part requires expert precision and timing. You must make the hammer hit the ground without crushing Lara, jumping out the way on the last second. The echo and impact from the hammer will make a block fall, allowing Lara to climb up into the chamber and grab one of the keys. The Atlas room takes a different approach. This one is a boulder puzzle, of course touching on the Atlas stones. As you enter this, you are greeted with a monkey. After you've killed that, you walk through the gate, and it slams behind you. The silence is deafening, and you must quickly wonder, what on earth am I going to do? As you run through the tunnel, you will quickly see the boulder comes crashing down. This is an adrenaline rush. You must sprint and time your movements perfectly to avoid being crushed. It's fast and it's punishing, and it adds almost a cinematic quality to the level, one of those sequences that players instantly remember. Once you have dodged this boulder successfully, you'll be able to climb up and grab the key for this room. Next is the Neptune room. This one is unique in itself. This involves a very deep dive into a pool of water. This is so deep you must keep a constant watch on your oxygen meter. If this is your first time, it can be panicky and difficult to determine what you need to do. As you do explore, you will see a lever is there to be pulled. This will open the gate and allow you to grab one of the keys. Finally is the Damocles room. This is probably the most psychologically intense room of the 4. At first glance, it looks safe, but suspicious. A wide chamber filled with swords suspended above. That can never be a good thing. As you first enter the room, nothing seems to happen until you pick up the key. As you leave the room where you find the key, you will notice that the swords begin to fall as you are underneath them. This makes each step loaded with tension. At any moment, they may come crashing down and impale Lara. Even though every blade might not fall, the anxiety they create is enough to make this room one of the most nerve-wracking in the entire game. What's brilliant about these 4 chambers is just how distinct they are. Each one explores a different facet of gameplay: awareness, timing, swimming, and psychological pressure. There's no repetition, no wasted design. By the time you've cleared them all, you've been tested on nearly every skill the game has introduced up to this point. And collectively, they elevate the level beyond simple exploration. They test the player in multiple ways and train you for even more of what's to come later on. But the puzzle rooms are only part of what makes this level such a leap forward. The real escalation comes when you combine them with the platforming challenges of the main area and the constant interference of Pierre Dupont. If the puzzle rooms represent the variety of challenges, the main chamber of this level represents the heart, St. Francis Folly's escalation. This is where the game makes its biggest leap forward. The hub room is essentially one giant vertical playground, and it asks far more of players than any previous level. You're constantly moving along narrow ledges, scaling walls, lining jumps, and calculating distance with absolute precision. For many, this was the first moment in Tomb Raider where a mistake didn't just cost your health, it actually meant plummeting several stories to instant death. And, in my opinion, that's the key. The verticality transforms how you think about traversal. You're not simply moving from point A to point B, but you're negotiating the space in 3 dimensions, gauging height, distance, and momentum with every movement. Missing a jump is frustrating and terrifying. The sheer drop beneath you is always in sight. This level keeps your palms sweaty, reminding you that mastery of Lara's weight, her stride, and her jump arc is non-negotiable. Compared to the earlier levels, like the caves or city of Vilcabamba, this is a quantum leap. Those were mostly horizontal spaces, yes, challenging in their own right, but rarely overwhelming. Here, the difficulty curve spikes. St. Francis Folly becomes a skill check. Can you truly handle the demands of Tomb Raider's mechanics, or were you just scraping by? It's a level that separates the casual players from the committed ones. And then, laid on top of all of this, comes Pierre Dupont. Pierre Dupont, first explained on Tomb of Qualopec, isn't just a background figure anymore. He becomes an active threat. In earlier levels, you only ever see Larson Conway. But here, he ambushes you right in the very first room, sniping you as you open the first door, and forcing you to juggle combat alongside navigation. Unlike the mindless wolves and bats you faced before, Pierre is mobile, intelligent, and persistent. And he won't just attack you, he will retreat, reappear, and keep you on edge. This makes exploration feel contested. This level is no longer yours to methodically pick apart at your leisure. It is a battleground. You're not the only one after the prize, and that rivalry injects tension into every climb and jump. Just when you're focused on lining up a tricky platform in sequence, a gunshot rings out, and suddenly you're scrambling to fight back before you lose all of your health. This combination, the precision demands of the vertical hub and unpredictable danger of Pierre, is what makes St. Francis Folly such a significant escalation. It's not just bigger, it's also more dangerous, and it forces you to adapt and think faster and refine your skills under pressure. For many players, including myself, it was the moment I realised Tomb Raider wasn't simply an atmospheric adventure. It was a game that demanded mastery, and it wasn't afraid to punish mistakes. Ask many veteran Tomb Raider players and they will say that St. Francis Folly is their favourite level in Tomb Raider 1 and even in the original trilogy. In my opinion, part of its legacy comes from its absolute ambition. In 1996, vertical 3D spaces of this size and complexity were almost unheard of. Most games of the era kept environments flat, simple and easy to navigate. But Tomb Raider dared to build a level that stretched to the sky, that challenged players to think about space in a new way. The sense of scale it achieved on limited hardware was nothing short of groundbreaking. But it's not just the technical achievement that makes it memorable, it's the design philosophy behind it. St. Francis Folly brings together everything that defines Tomb Raider: platforming that requires precision, puzzles that test logic and observation, combat that feels tense and unpredictable, and an atmosphere that inspires awe. It is, in my opinion, the complete package, a microcosm of what the entire series strives for. Its pacing, the level flow is absolutely beautiful, and the main room gives you a central anchor, while the 4 puzzle rooms branch off into unique experiences. Each one has its own identity, its own challenge, but together build a rhythm that keeps that player engaged from start to finish. Few levels, in my opinion, manage to strike such a perfect balance between variety and cohesion. Ultimately, St. Francis Folly represents a moment when Tomb Raider transitioned from being a promising adventure game into something iconic. It's when you realise this game was serious and it wasn't messing about. It challenged players, surprised them, and it showed what 3D level design was actually capable of. That's why, in my opinion, and nearly 3 decades later, it isn't just remembered as another level in the series. It is absolutely celebrated by everybody, Lara Croft fans and those who spectate and wouldn't dare attempt the game. St. Francis Folly was a statement, and it still echoes all these years later as an absolute marvel within the Tomb Raider series. Thank you so much for watching my video on a level review of Tomb Raider 1's St. Francis Folly. If you did like the video, please do like and subscribe and leave a comment down below whether you like this level and why, or dislike this level and why. As always, thank you to my YouTube members for your continued support, and to you all, thank you for watching.